Lingua Brutalica is a podcast that uses ethnographic interviews to study language use in the extreme metal community. We are studying a music scene known for its love of themes and topics generally considered offensive, and it is likely that some episodes will touch on topics or opinions some listeners may find tasteless or ethically problematic. Ethnographic researchers aim to adopt the interviewee's point of view so that we can draw out and study the attitudes, beliefs, and practices that are important to them. We want to make it clear that in presenting these conversations here, we do not endorse any of their content. Our aim is to explore the thought processes behind language use in this long-running, international, and yet understudied scene. Hi everyone, you're listening to Lingua Brutalica, hosted by me, Jess Benny-Smith, and my co-host, Wes Robertson.
Hello.
And tonight we're talking with Stace and Stu of Blindfolded and Led to the Woods, who are based in Christchurch, New Zealand. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Sure.
Well, thanks for being with us today.
No worries. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, this is a first.
Yeah, that's great. So usually we start off these interviews just by asking our guests to describe their music for a listener who'd potentially never heard of Blindfolded and Led to the Woods.
Fire it off, Stu.
Okay. Well, I guess we're a avant-garde, progressive, technical, blackened death metal band. People find it.
I think
really
that's the most labels we've ever got.
A lot of adjectives.
People find it really hard to kind of pigeonhole us into a genre. So, we're just kind of rolling with some of those kind of key words that people have been using. So it keeps getting longer and longer. Yeah.
Do you personally have a preference, or do you not really care what the labels are?
For me, I kind of like the fact that people kind of make up their own mind in a way, I guess. For me, that kind of shows that they're listening intently, I guess. Yeah.
Does it make it harder though to find listeners or fans if you don't fall into one neat category?
Well, in today's day and age, I don't think it does matter really. There's so many subgenres in metal now that it's quite insane. So if you dig it, then sweet, and you can call it what you want.
I think that we've definitely sort of come into our age on our latest record. So I really feel like we've found our market. And there are specific areas of social media that are sort of specifically digging our new stuff more than other places. And those places are defined by the sort of subgenres and sub-labels that they give it. So I've definitely noticed that with our most recent work anyway.
You mentioned this is sort of a change. Do you think that metal in the past was a bit more strict genre divides and things are kind of bleeding? Is this something you've seen change over the last few years?
I think so. Yeah, I think as it's evolved, there's so much has happened with the music in general. What used to just be a death metal band is now like a slamming death metal band, or a brutal death metal band, or a blackened death metal band, whatever it may be. But as it's evolved, I guess people have taken their favorite parts of different genres and kind of combined them, and then you get these kind of crazy things and people
hybrids.
I guess they want to be able to define it, so
So can you tell us a bit about how you first got into metal and what attracted you to the style to begin with?
For me, sure. When I was a teenager, I was listening to a lot of hip hop. I was about 13 and I was listening to a lot of hip hop. And I suddenly came across the band Limp Bizkit, which obviously everyone knows, but it was the crossover of hip hop and hard rock, heavy sort of metal rock. And that fascinated me. I thought, well, why not have both? because my dad was a bit of a rocker, and he, I think, would prefer that I wasn't listening to as much hip hop. So I sort of like, I was covering both bases with that, and then just fell into the rabbit hole via those early new metal bands, and then fell into more and more extreme styles.
For me, it was I started playing guitar when I was like 9, and I think I just constantly was chasing a heavier and harder thing to play, which naturally just led to metal. Starting, learning what a drop tuning is for a start, and thinking, oh, that sounds pretty cool. And learning about bands like System of a Down and things like that, and then like Stace said, it's you fall down the rabbit hole, and all of a sudden you're listening to heavier and heavier things, and you're kind of like chasing that high of finding that next heavier thing.
Yeah, I think the new metal to extreme metal pipeline was something that a lot of people around our age kind of fell into.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it wasn't just me; it was like all of my friends at the time as well. We all fell down the same rabbit hole there.
So did you kind of, was it a social thing too? Like you'd all kind of move from band to band as sort of a group instead of by yourself, or did you sort of outpace your friends as you got into extreme metal and they stayed with new metal? Or
I totally lost friends.
Oh wow.
But I also gained a lot of friends as well.
Yeah, I found at high school, music, because I was never the sporty kid. I wasn't out on the field playing sports. I was in the music room and trying to learn to play the drums, and certainly it was definitely a social thing. Like if you liked particular bands, then you were this kind of person, and it was a defining thing. And as a teenager, I think me and at least my friend group, we put so much we probably poured so much time and attention into that, and I've certainly learned to grow out of that sort of judgment side of things that occurred at high school, but it was formative anyway.
And was there anything about like the lyrical content, as you both said that, obviously the music attracted you to metal first, but was there anything ever about the lyrical content of metal that attracted you to the genre?
Yeah, I always would buy actual CDs, because that was a thing that you would do.
Back in the day.
Yeah, and I would love having the booklet and going through the booklet. Like I remember getting my first Nile CD, and Nile's one of my absolute all-time favorite bands, and I just couldn't believe it, because in this booklet, it was the album Annihilation of the Wicked. You had the lyrics of each song, but then Carl Sanders had also written like a literal essay about each song. So the booklet was massive, and not only did you have the lyrics, but you were learning about Egyptian mythology and all this like crazy stuff that was going on, and I always just found that fascinating. Also bands like Pig Destroyer, who they're such an extreme like grind band, but you read their lyrics and they're really like beautiful and poetic. And I think that that's something that I always personally wanted to aspire to with our lyrics.
You had Sanders on your recent album, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, both Stace and I have some framed lyrics from Carl that we both have now. Both got a different song each, but the actual lyrics they used while in the studio. And he signed them and stuff. Really, really genuinely amazing dude. Lovely guy.
like on a like a notebook paper kind of thing?
No, it's like on like papyrus, It's
Nile. Oh my god, that's amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Nile, man. It's papyrus.
Oh, that's cool as hell.
Yeah.
And Stace, how about you?
This might sound a little strange, and I'm not sure if this is what you guys were after tonight, but I've always, specifically with metal, I've always thought of the vocalist as being an instrument. And even though I've listened to death metal, extreme metal, black metal, all the genres that have the sort of almost unintelligible sort of vocalizations. The lyrics, I didn't really care too much for them. I didn't care to read them. I didn't buy CDs too much. I didn't look at all the lyrics in the songs. What I liked about it was listening to the vocals coming through as a separate instrument, as amongst it. But that's not to say that I do not appreciate good lyrics, and it's not to say that I don't appreciate writing them either.
Has that changed at all since you started writing lyrics, or do you still mainly consider it to be an instrument?
I would say I'm both now. Yeah, I appreciate good lyrics when I do find some lyrics for another band, for instance, that I'll sit down and read. Probably because I've emotionally matured, and so I'll try and I'll try and see and hear where people are coming from with their lyrics, whereas I might not have been sort of mature enough to really take it into consideration before now.
So this actually kind of links to the sorry, the one question we just asked is that has your feelings about metal and kind of metalness, etc., changed over the years? Do you both think? Is that like do you feel that you engage with the genre differently now than when you did, say, when you first started playing?
100%, definitely. The things that made me tick when I was younger would be, what's the most offensive thing I can find? What's the most disgusting thing I can find? Like, there's so much of that in metal, and especially like back in the day, I think, bands, like early Cannibal Corpse and some of that really like ultra brutal stuff that now I look back on and I kind of, I guess there's a space for it, but for me now it doesn't do anything for me anymore. As Stace said, I guess we matured a whole lot, and now, like, back in the day, I used to try to look up and I looked up to those kind of lyrics, and now I'm like, that is just disgusting. Like you can't say things like that. But as a teenager, it was kind of like, like I said earlier, like chasing that high. But now for me, it's more about kind of expressing, some of the things that I've been through and real life experiences, and hoping that someone out there might read our lyrics and kind of relate to them in some way. We've been through some crazy shit here in Christchurch, and I think, like, I would love it if our music touched people and they connected it to it and it helped them in some way,
Just do you feel the same, like similar changes?
Yeah, absolutely. But even if I look at, we've released 3 albums and 1 EP, and even looking back at sort of 10 years ago when we were doing our EP and our first album, the lyrics back then, I can look back and be like, I can look back and laugh, I can look back and cringe, I can look back and be happy with some of the things that I've written. But I really think that we've sort of come into our footing with our most recent stuff, and I think that Stu and I have both put a bit more time and attention into the purpose of our lyrics, and we hope that that's sort of felt as well from the listener or reader.
So based on this kind of shift in your perspective on how to write good metal lyrics, has this affected, I suppose, your own kind of personal definitions of what metal music is?
Yeah, that's a really hard question, because I don't think I'm in a position to really define what metal music is. It's so vast and so varied. Everyone's going to tell you a different answer to that, I think. And I mean, the shifts in my perspective on metal lyrics from a personal writer's perspective, I don't think have any bearing on what metal is as a whole. Maybe that's because I'm just thinking in a silo there. I'm not maybe imagining what our effect on metal as a genre actually is or has been. But yeah, that's a difficult question. I don't really know.
You have a definition of metal, Stu?
I mean, Yeah, I don't really have a definition of metal either. I think Stace is the same. Like we both have such a huge like spectrum of music that we listen to as well. Metal's one facet of our personality, but I guess in one way, when I was young, like reading a lyric about zombies coming to kill people and like cannibalism and stuff, it made me excited. Now it's kind of spun the opposite way, and writing lyrics about my life and being here and experiencing consciousness, and songs about kind of being alive is now what makes me tick. So I guess in a way it's kind of gone 180. What metal means to me now is a lot different to what it meant to me as a kid. As a kid, a lot of it was probably like, I want to express myself in a way that people like cannot ignore, big prints on t-shirts of people just being like mutilated. It's like, that's crazy now. Now I really like the artistic side of it more than the sort of horror side of it, I guess.
So given the variation that you both identified in what metal can be, would you say that metal is distinguishable still from other genres, or is it, I suppose, a little bit too hard to pin down and separate from those other genres you mentioned?
I think there's some fundamental like aspects to it that are unchanging. For instance, metal, I think, is always going to have distorted guitars, and it's always going to have drums, and it's always going to have aggression. I think aggression is a fundamental to metal, and it's also, I think, maybe it's about giving the finger to the mainstream a bit as well. Yeah, I think like there's a few things that will always be fundamental to metal, because if there are no fundamentals, then it's like you say, it's hard to put your finger on it.
Is there anything fundamental to metal lyrics? Like, is it possible to write lyrics that aren't metal if the music is metal?
Definitely. I think that there are some songs that on our new album that I look at the lyrics and I definitely don't see a metal song, at all. But when it's paired with the music, it totally makes sense. Going back to a band like Pig Destroy, and when you're looking at basically like poetry, and then when it's paired with the aggressive music, it does kind of make sense. So it's cool because metal has come into its own, and it's now actually like a viable, huge, global like thing that has connected people in it, and it's massive. You look at a festival like Wacken and you've got 100,000 people or whatever. Back in the day that would have never ever happened, but now it is as big as any other genre, and in some cases bigger than a lot of other genres. So I don't even know. I don't know.
I feel like I can add something to that. When I was asked to join the band, I'll give you a bit of a backstory there. I've always generally been a pretty happy person. I've never really been a dark person. I never really felt angry or pissed off at the world, or all that sort of thing. And so when I was asked to join the band as a vocalist, I remember saying right back then, 11 years ago, that I wasn't prepared to write lyrics that were what I thought were traditional metal lyrics, which was, rape, guts, gore, pillage, all that sort of thing. And I remember saying that I wasn't prepared to write lyrics about a lot of that stuff right at the beginning anyway, just because it wasn't me. And I felt that if I was going to have any sort of sense of convincing anybody that I was taking myself seriously, then I had to at least believe in the lyrics that I was saying. So I mean, that led to some really crazy things. In our first EP, we have a song literally about Lego, building Lego, and then just smashing it all to pieces and starting all over again and things like that. But it didn't really matter in a way, because it didn't really matter to me, because it was in a death metal medium, and my vocals are an instrument. And so to anyone listening, it could sound like it's, you know, a very heavy or dark, brutal or angry song, but what I'm actually saying could be considered quite benign or fun or happy even.
That's interesting. So then what is the role of the lyrics then? If, you know, we assume that most people won't actually be able to understand or interpret the lyrics when you know, produce them in the context of the song.
Well, I mean, who knows?
we're hoping you do.
Yeah. I mean, you said that you, like, you know, you want to believe in like the lyrics that you're producing, right? And so obviously you do have like some lines, at least you said you originally had some lines that you didn't want to cross regarding like what you would include in the lyrics. So I'm just wondering, like, given that, then there must be some role of the lyrics that you're assigning to them.
Yeah, because if it's purely an instrument, right, you could just make like pig noises, but you've chosen some specific. You've chosen to sing about Legos, right?
Yeah, well, prior to me joining this band, the band was sort of like born out of the ashes of another band, which kind of didn't have lyrics. Stu would be able to speak to it. The band before I joined was called Sacrament and not Blindfolded and Led to the Woods. And as far as I'm aware, Stu will be able to speak to this. The lyrics were few and far between.
Yeah, we would do exactly what Stace is talking about there, but it was kind of like more like gore grind sort of music. So like we would actually just make phrases of sounds that we thought sounded like sick. And so, you know, instead of having a lyric, it would be like a phrase of a noise. And you know, if you listen to it, you'd be like, oh, I wonder what these guys are saying, because it didn't really sound any different to any other metal band or death metal band or grind band or whatever. But you know, I think it also comes with us taking ourselves a whole lot more seriously and taking what we do a lot more seriously now as well. So as Stace said earlier, we now take our lyrics are something we take really seriously, whereas maybe 10 years ago we wouldn't have taken them as seriously. But you know, we didn't sing them with any less conviction.
Do you have like lyrics right now that you are like finding really, really good or really, really influencing your style? Are there lyricists right now that you would say you draw on, or do you kind of try to just get into your own head and explore your own space?
Yeah, I like with Blindfolded, my whole thing about it is like not actually having inspiration from like anyone if I can help it, and that because that comes with writing the music and also writing the lyrics. I don't want us to sound like anyone else, and I don't, and it's the same with the lyrics. I don't want people to read it and think, oh, this is a ripoff of whoever, or listen to it and think this sounds just like this. You know, the whole, I guess one of the main points of our band is to express who we are, musically and lyrically, and yeah, I just like I despise the idea of being compared and or you know having songs that sound like someone else's, and there's a lot of that in metal. There's so many bands now, it's so saturated. There's so many bands that sound the same, and that's cool. Like that's I would hate to take away anything from anyone else who's working hard, doing their music, but for us, this is unique. It is us. It is who we are. It's you know, it's an expression of us, and I don't want that to sound like anyone else.
So how do you guys actually write like as a pair? Because we have talked to one pair before, but usually it's just one person in the band doing most lyrics. Is it completely separate, or when you do this kind of process, is it very collaborative?
Completely separate. really. Stu will write songs, and I will write songs, and I think we go about it in different ways, slightly. Correct me if I'm wrong, Stu, but I believe that Stu will write lyrics by himself without too much sort of, I don't want to say the word care here, but without too much collaboration with the actual song itself. I believe that Stu, is that right, Stu? Like, you could write lyrics and there might not even be a song there yet?
Yeah, absolutely. I usually have like ideas or an idea or something that's happened to me that I want to write about, and it's not related to the music whatsoever. I'll just start writing, and then often together Stace and I will make those lyrics somehow fit the song that I've written musically. But often my lyrics are just things that I've written, like and it'll be like, okay, that's the song. That's a song's worth of lyrics, and it's got a beginning, and it's got a middle, and it's got an end, and and there it is. Now we've got to figure out how to somehow put it to this crazy song.
Yeah. Whereas when I'm writing lyrics, it's usually after quite a bunch of the music is made already, and I'll take some of those demos that Stu makes and sends through to me, and I mean, I don't sit there and go, all right, well, here's a bar of 7 and then a bar of 8, and then, all right, so I've got to count out the syllables. But there kind of is a bit of that, if you know what I mean. Like, I'll come up with an idea and I'll sort of shuffle around or shorten or see if I can rephrase one of the sentences I've written to see if it can fit better to the piece that I'm writing to.
Do you said you do show each other lyrics though? Do you ever edit each other's lyrics, or is it mainly just, like, hey, check out what I did?
We haven't really messed with each other's lyrics at all, really.
No, we have done when we've recorded them. So Stu will record a demo without any vocals to it. He'll flick it through to me, and I'll listen to it. And if I'm writing the lyrics, then I'll write them to it. And then Stu and I will get together and we will record the vocal demo over top of the demo that he's created. And sometimes we'll do a little bit of editing there, because we might realize that, it would sound better if it was like shorter here or longer here, or what's a way that we can make this idea that you've written just fleshed out a bit to really fill this part of the song here, so it works. Yeah, so there's a little bit of editing when we make the demos, but I wouldn't be so bold as to go onto one of the songs Stu's written and be like, oh no, this has got to go. This has got to go.
I think when I write the music, often there will be sections that I know there's going to be lyrics over, that just have to have lyrics over, and then we make them fit. I definitely write lyrics with like a kind of like a phrasing in mind. I mean, you guys have probably seen that with reading them, that a lot of the songs that I wrote lyrically didn't have any kind of what's the word, like, I don't know how to say it. I know what it looks like.
Like a meter, maybe.
Yeah, like any kind of meterage, But that's one of the beautiful things about metal, I think, is that you don't really need that. You can have, if you've got a blast beat going on underneath, you can kind of phrase however you want over top of that. There's like no rules,
And so do you think that, your lyrical styles are distinguishable from one another? Like, can you, do you reckon that people would be able to, for instance, like, look at a song and say, like, okay, this is clearly a Stace song, or this is a Stu song?
I think that's pretty easy for us to know.
Yeah.
I think Stu's lyrics tend to be like he mentioned earlier, about things that have happened to him in his life. And I know that he writes a lot about his dreams and things like that come to him. Where I like creative writing, and I like journalism, and I like things like that. So if I wanted to write a song, I could sit down for a couple of hours and sort of look back at all the things that I've thought about in the last couple of weeks and see if there's any good material there to pull a song out of. It's not so I definitely think the outcomes are very distinguishable, but maybe I'm just biased because I know. Maybe you guys might have an opinion on that. I don't know.
We didn't know if you wrote together or not, so I didn't read them trying to parse who did what. I didn't realize it was completely separate.
Yeah, I think based on that other interview, we just assumed maybe there was a bit more like collaboration on individual songs. So
the last band we talked to,
I'll have to look back over it now.
So we'll get back to you. We'll send you guesses.
Another look.
yeah. Lotto draw. We'll send you an album if you get it right.
Oh, all right.
Nice.
So I guess also we're just wondering, as people that are active in the New Zealand metal scene and write lyrics in the New Zealand metal scene, is there anything do you think that is like, is there a New Zealand style to language use in metal, or is there a New Zealand style to like the performance of metal? Is there anything that sort of you find in New Zealand and New Zealand metal bands lyrics, or even just what you say on stage that you don't find when you go overseas, or even just over over Australia?
I think that New Zealanders in general are very dry people, and you definitely hear that. Like if you're at gigs and you're watching a band, the banter in between songs is often like kind of like terrible or like really awesome. And so I don't know, it's funny being we're such a small country, and it's kind of, when you see the big bands come through and you see the way that different vocalists and stuff kind of present themselves, I think that a lot of what happens here is inspired by a lot of those people, because we don't really get to go out and see massive shows all the time. We've got to kind of wait for them to come to us. So I guess that there probably would be like a quite a New Zealand distinguishable style, but like there's not like a whole lot of bands either. So you kind of have like the bigger bands in the scene, the likes of like Ulcerate and Organectomy and like Swamp Dweller and things like that. And those are three bands that are like cranking in our scene right now, but they're all three bands that are like very different as well. So you don't have like heaps of bands doing the same thing. There's kind of like heaps of bands, but they all kind of have their thing. So it's all, everyone here is so different. There's a lot going on, but not a lot of people doing the same kind of thing, if that makes sense.
Like you mentioned, splitting lyrics between you two. Do you think if we played just accents aside, if we showed transcripts of like Aussie stage banter and New Zealand stage banter, would you be able to tell it apart?
Yeah, there'd be a lot more probably chur and bro in the Kiwi stuff.
There's a great band in Christchurch here, and they're called Unyielding Desolation, and they their whole thing is like party vibes, and they're like hilarious. They'll have like balloons and streamers and like all that kind of stuff. And their like on stage banter is just hilarious. Jamie, their vocalist, he's a real character. There's a lot of characters in the metal scene, because I think that the New Zealand metal is kind of like spawned from a lot of like young people feeling like they don't kind of fit in, which is kind of the classic metal cliche. But, like where I went to high school, it was like if you didn't play rugby, like no one gave a shit. No one cared about you. It was like, you got to play rugby. And, that made all these crazy metal kids. It just like created them. And so it also created a bunch of like real characters. It's awesome.
Can't play rugby, might as well listen to some metal.
Oh, yeah, do blast.
Yeah. Honestly, I went to the same school as Stu did, but 5 years earlier, and it was the exact same thing. I was, like I said earlier in the interview, didn't play rugby. I was at the music room, and and I mean the rugby guys have got to have someone to bully, right? So I think in metal we definitely found something that said that we were still good enough. It does sound cliche to say that, and I don't think I've ever really put that into words before, but it is kind of true. Those sorts of formative years at early years in high school is definitely what led me onto my path with metal, and probably led me down the path of writing and appreciating lyrics as well.
When you're writing, is there any ever time that you have do you edit as well? Have you ever deleted anything because it's like, oh, that's not a good lyric, or maybe even say like, oh, that's not very metal, that doesn't fit. Has you ever written anything that's like too happy or too bright and has to go, or maybe like a word that just doesn't feel like it fits the genre, or is that not, or is it pretty, it just kind of flows out?
No, I don't think so. I think there was a couple of parts of that question there. Do I feel like I would ever delete something because it was never not metal enough? No, I don't think I would, because sort of in the earlier years of this band, I actually found it a bit of a personal challenge to write something that was the most unmetal thing you'd ever heard, but deliver it in a death metal medium, and I'd get some enjoyment out of that, whether anyone knew it or not.
I've definitely deleted a lot. Like, I've deleted more lyrics than I've written, 100%. But I think a lot of that is because I'm not the person. I don't sing in this band. I mean, I do backing vocals here and there, but I also have to write something that I'm comfortable with Stace singing on my behalf. Or, I don't want Stace singing, or be put in a position where he has to say, look, I can't sing this. Like, this is your song, or, maybe it's something that's like too close to me that Stace couldn't sing. So often when those ideas are flowing for me, they'll end up in like one of my, like I've got a weird side project that a lot of those lyrics will end up in, which is just me by myself, and then I can express those things and not kind of put that burden on Stace.
So, like, what would be the actual criteria for a deletion of lyrics? Like, is it just that they're too personal, as you were saying, Stu, or is there more to it than that?
Sometimes it's just not very good. Not every song is a hit. I think I've thrown away a lot of lyrics, and I even had like a phone that just gave up, and I lost like a phone's, because my notepad is just full of shit that I'm thinking about all the time, and I lost like a phone's worth of lyrics, which was quite devastating, and that sucks. But most of the time it's because they're not really good enough, and I kind of I know when I've written something that I'm happy with and that I want out there in the world. There's things that I also that I would write and think, okay, that's for me and me alone. I'm glad I got that off my chest and wrote about it, but no one's going to sing that. Or maybe I will.
There's been a lot of research today kind of on metal that's talked about, especially a lot of it draws on stuff like Cannibal Corpse, etc. That kind of argue that a facet of the metal genre is that there's like kind of this distance taken from the lyrics. Like, I know that George Fisher has said that he's just trying to make like a horror movie kind of atmosphere. Is that something that you personally align with, or do you feel that sort of metal is more about like things that you want to explore personally, then, given that you said, especially Stu, you've been mentioning this kind of a bit, but do you feel that like that's an older mindset perhaps, or is that something that's still common in the scene, do you think?
I think it's probably more common than what we think, that people are really disconnecting themselves from what they're writing, because otherwise everyone who's a fucking death metal vocalist would be in jail.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Like some of the stuff that some of these bands write about are just like horrific, and that's not to say that they don't go out and work a 9-to-5 job as like a businessman number one. Like you can't live that you can't live that life for real. But like George Corpsegrinder says, it's creating that kind of horror movie vibe, and that totally works for Cannibal Corpse. Like that is their thing, and that's been their thing for like 35, 40 years, whatever it's been. They can't change, they can't straighten. The fans would riot. But you definitely can see, like, as a band like Cannibal Corpse, they started out, and some of the things they wrote about back in the day, they no longer touch. And I think that, that's a really probably them growing out of a lot of those kind of like more taboo subjects. But that's not to say, there are still slam bands and gore grind bands that are coming out by the dozen that are still singing about that kind of stuff. And I think we're probably, like, I feel like we're heading to a point where people are starting to kind of express that maybe that's not okay to sing about, or like, why are you singing about that? I definitely see more of that now than I ever have. And I think that's a positive thing, because there are better things to write songs about. But, you've also got to have, a death metal band still has to write brutal lyrics to some degree. But, I quite like the way that metal's gone in like a spacey kind of direction, like Obscura and, some of these more like techie bands that have kind of matched their lyrics up to the music, because the music's so like technical, and the lyrics have kind of gone in this like technical way. So they're singing about all kinds of like crazy shit, like supernovas and like,
Wormed is a good example of that. Singing about galactic warfare and lasers and aliens and stuff.
Yeah, like that's totally sick, and that totally works.
And Stace, do you have the kind of same take on this distance that vocalists in the past have taken from their lyrics, or do you think about it differently?
I think it's a personal thing, really. I believe that you kind of got to separate the art from the artist sometimes. That old saying, never meet your heroes, because you'll realize that they're just a bunch of dicks. So I listen to a lot of black metal, and a lot of the early Norwegian black metal lyrics, if not in Norwegian, if they're in English, they're quite dark, and there's nationalism in there. There's anti-homosexuality as well in some of the old lyrics, and I mean, I don't vibe with that at all. But because I listen to the vocalist as an instrument, I find it quite easy to separate the art from the artist. I don't need to jive with their political leanings to appreciate the sounds that I'm hearing on my ears. So that's one thing for me, separating the art from the artist. But also, like, nowadays, if somebody wants to write about, like Cannibal Corpse style blood, gore, rape, pillage, murder, all of that sort of thing, if they say that I'm just writing this because it's an outlet for me and I wanted to shock people and I've done my job well, that's fine with me too. I've got really no problem with that. For me personally, I don't like to write about that. I'd rather write about something else. I'd probably rather write about anything else, to be honest. It's just not me as a person.
So I wondered, given what you've just said, then how you feel about, for instance, some of the, potentially homophobic and misogynistic content of some of your early song lyrics. How do you feel, I suppose, about the acceptability of that language? And I guess, has your view on this changed across time? Oh,
the views have definitely changed over time. you know, for if I can just use the really common example of, you know, 10 years ago, it would be so common to walk down the street, and if you didn't like something, you'd hear people calling it gay. You know, gay was like this common derogatory term for naming anything you didn't like. And I mean, like that's almost completely wiped out now in at least all of my social circle. So if you can extrapolate from that and apply it to lyric writing, for us, you know, we've all gone through that big change of what was socially acceptable 10 years ago doesn't fly these days, and I imagine it's definitely had its effect on lyric writing for sure.
One thing we both noticed when we were looking through your lyrics is we started with your newest album, and we jumped back a little bit, and just even the titles just seemed really, really different. Like Armed to the Teeth with Jelly Beans, to even like My Vaseline Diaries, and then you have your new album, and even like I guess the covers were different. Like with the new album, the art is. So I guess we've talked about this a bit, kind of on and off, but just kind of diving into it directly. Was there something that caused this sort of change, or was it just kind of a gradual evolution? Because the things seem to differ a lot when we were looking back and forth between the two. Just again, art, lyrics, everything seems to be completely different over this 10-year period.
Yeah, I think that as we mentioned earlier, there's definitely been like a maturing within the band, and I also feel like with this last album, that I think we'd probably all agree that there's been a large step up in terms of sort of professionalism, and there was a sort of conscious effort to sort of drop the joke side of stuff. You know, we didn't used to take it so seriously, and that would come out in the lyrics, that would come out in the song titles and in the album titles. And I mean, even looking back right to the first EP artwork and things with the clown and the gun and all that sort of thing. But if I try and look for any sort of landmark as to what might have instigated the big step up with this most recent album, it might have been with Ben, our other guitarist, with him joining. Because the guitarist that was in the band before him, we had some sort of like we had some interpersonal issues there where we didn't like some of the behaviors and things we were recognizing, and we wanted to take this band to the next level. We knew that we had to change some things, and letting go of him and taking on a new guitarist was a big part of that. And I think he has also brought a professionalism with him to the band, and I think we've all stepped up together as part of that. If that can give you a, you might want to add something to that. I don't know.
I totally agree. Absolutely. The person that I was 10 years ago sitting there writing music is, you know, I would love to talk to that kid and be like, yo, like, you know,
sort it out.
yeah, you know, and we've grown up so much and we've all changed so much. It's funny looking back through the history of the band and it kind of being, like you say, like the changes, I think, in us as people is like reflective in the music that we've made. You know, and I think that not just us in the band, but like our kind of social circles are definitely on like a really like positive path to making positive changes in, you know, in society to an extent. You know, like Stace was saying, Ben joining the band, he's come from a background of you know, he had a business where his whole goal was to feed children who were in poverty here in Christchurch and who were going to school without lunches and things like that. And so, you know, when you start seeing some of these like real world things and you look at some of the things that you've written and maybe some of the things that you've released along the way, you kind of realize that some of those things might actually have like real world consequences. and I want the world to be genuinely a better place for everyone, really. And yeah.
Do you think that this is something that is new to metal, or is this kind of always like when I was growing up? I remember very much people saying, and this I come from a very religious area, so that definitely influences interpretation. But don't get into metal because it's dark and it's evil and it's sad and the people are mean and the people are angry. And if I admit, like when I was 16 years old and getting into metal, I was a little bit angry. Not anything in particular, just stuff. But do you think like this kind of positivity or this desire to make metal that does do something good is new, or has it always been there, or is it something that has kind of the scene's been allowed to investigate after it's you said like settled down, matured at the earlier in this interview? Yeah, like were we too young to notice it, or is it something that's kind of changed over the last few years?
I feel like it's something that's changed because when I was younger and I was angry and I had all this anger that I don't know really where it was coming from, but I guess things that were happening at school and stuff like that. When I'd listen to the music and it was so angry, that would make me feel good. Now that's not what makes me feel good about the music. It's it's kind of the opposite. Yeah, it's changed so much for me personally. It's hard to say like on a kind of global scale what's going on, but I think with the changes in society in general that we see, a lot of the kind of behaviors and stuff, like Stace said, that might have been acceptable 10 years ago that now aren't. That flows into so many facets of life.
Yeah, for sure. I reckon things have definitely changed. Just to mirror what Stu has said, I think society as a whole is changing, and with that will things will either adapt or fall away, but in like natural selection. If the consumers of metal music are wanting lyrics that are uplifting and motivating and are about real world things, then that's what they'll get given, because metal will change with it. Being that they're the consumers. I mean, there's always going to be metal bands that are like, oh, we don't play music for anyone else. It's just for us, and we're going to do our own thing. Yeah, sweet as. That's always going to be there. But metal as a whole, I think that if society changes, then the music will, and subsequently the lyrics will change with it.
It's very interesting. When you're talking about, your desire to write lyrics to kind of a positive message or something, or like talk about a specific issue, I did notice that on the newest album, like the lyrics do have some ambiguity to them overall. Like I didn't read any songs that are like, I talked about Pig Destroyer and stuff. Like there wasn't like an Army of Cops style song where it's like this song is about cops, right? Is that something that you both seek? Like do you try to make the lyrics a bit open to interpretation? Or do you think that in general metal lyrics need to have like a bit of room to breathe, or is that just personally you don't want to write a song that's too straightforward?
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to give away your cards. You want to keep some close to your chest, I guess. A little bit of ambiguity is all right, I think, and giving them room to breathe. Those things that you mentioned, I tend to agree with. I think if you wrote about specifics, something, for instance, if I wanted to write a song about my mum having cancer, I wouldn't write a song literally about my mother and this is her name and she had cancer and this is the hospital she was in. I wouldn't say something like that. I would use poetic license and creative writing to make it a bit more accessible, maybe.
As Stace mentioned earlier, like quite a lot of my lyrics are about like dreams that I've had, and I think like ever since like the earthquakes happened, I've had, and like our best friend was his name was Matty, and he was killed in the earthquakes.
Jeez.
And that was like a really life-changing moment for me. I think probably for everyone in the band, for a lot of people in New Zealand. and a lot of those kind of like traumas and things that we saw, and things, people we knew, the kind of like 5 degrees of separation of people who passed away there, like I think it created a lot of trauma for people here, and it definitely did for me. And I started getting these like really vivid, crazy dreams, and a lot of the time, like I can't quite remember them properly. There might be like little things here and there that I remember, but probably a lot of ambiguity in my lyrics come from the fact that I kind of know like what is going on in my head, but I also don't. So it's like hard to convey my kind of feelings, I guess, but I really want to.
Mm-hmm.
Is the album cover supposed to be kind of dreamish? Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, when you're in a dream and you can't move your limbs properly, or you're trying to say something and it's not coming out, or you can't like breathe properly or something like that. Like I experience those things very frequently, and sometimes that I get like sleep paralysis quite a lot, and I'll be like awake but I can't move. My partner will have to like wake me up, because I might be like kind of like hyperventilating or something like that. And these are all things that have inspired a lot of the lyrics. And like Nightmare Withdrawals, like that's a lyric from one of the songs. And I always thought, like, would I feel guilty if these kind of feelings stopped? Would I feel guilty for moving on from some of these traumas? Would it make me feel like I don't care as much about my friend that passed away, yeah.
Yeah, the artwork
anything...
on
sorry, go ahead.
The artwork on Nightmare Withdrawals was a commission from a Polish artist who goes by the name A Great Mass, and we sort of gave him sort of like the underlying tone of the album and the lyrics across the board, and he sort of like did up a couple of sketches and then sent it back through, and then came back with that. So yeah, it definitely ties in with what Stu has just been talking about.
So do you think that metal, and I guess like, a genre known for, like death and zombies and things, can be a space for exploring, like for healing, for navigating trauma?
100%.
For sure.
Absolutely. I think that it's the perfect place for it. It's provided, I think that a lot of metal bands were born from suffering in some way. And, as we mentioned right at the start, kind of stick it to the man kind of thing. And that comes from a form of like poverty, I guess, you're not really wanting to stick it to the man if you are the man. Yeah.
I think a lot of people that get into metal, as I mentioned earlier, that old cliche, the young misfits that aren't the sporting jocks, so they so often kids fall into metal because it makes them feel good about themselves, and if those lyrics happen to be positive as well, like who knows what could happen.
Yeah, I think like it already has been a place for healing, for a long time since the earliest bands playing metal, apart from the kind of shock horror ones, they were kind of, and even like the early punk stuff, it was like it was a rebellion because they were going through shit and their lives weren't particularly easy. You can get together with your friends and make music about it. That's pretty sick.
So although there are a lot of approaches to metal today that do kind of draw on the kind of experiences that you're talking about, there are also a lot that explore more comedic elements, like the ones we talked about a little bit earlier. And it seems like, based on what Wes and I've spoken about, that there are these kind of like two factions within metal, whereby one kind of desires that more light-hearted, easygoing approach to metal, and another that does desire kind of more grim seriousness or development of more serious topics. I suppose something that we were wondering is, how do you navigate these expectations, and do you even consider the expectations at all?
I don't think that we're a band that really considers the expectations of people. I think that with the direction that we've gone, we kind of set the expectations ourselves. Like, this is what we want to see. I'm really proud of the album and the lyrics and stuff that are on it, and that's something that maybe I wouldn't say about our earlier work. Looking at some of the lyrics, some of the songs. But that's part of growing up, some of those songs I wrote when I was 18 or 19 or whatever, and I was a teenager doing crazy shit, getting drunk, being an absolute menace to society. And now I'm 31 and I look back and I go, man, I'm glad I had those experiences, because it's made me a much better person in some respects,
It's like, in general, we mentioned at the beginning that you had a bunch of things that were kind of humorous, taking the piss in your early albums. Again, like Armed to Teeth with Jelly Beans as just the key example of, I guess, a title that, if you meant us to take it seriously, it was a bit, thought it was a bit hard to take seriously. But this is definitely faded off. But there was, I don't know if it was supposed to be humorous, but on the new album, you did have a song, where like Lucid Visitations, where you say everything's quite serious, and then recollection can be a bitch, but she ain't got shit on you, exclamation mark, and the song kind of just ends on that. And that seemed like a bit jocular to me. And I guess, is it hard to work in things like that, or am I completely misinterpreting the goal of that line in the song?
I think that there's still a lot of light-hearted stuff, because we are in this band and we do have a really good time. Some of that stuff is gonna come through in our music. We're still not the band that wants to be super, super serious. We're still five best friends that are having an awesome time together, and we love playing music together. We want to tour, we want to see the world together and do this great stuff. But we do have a really good time, and although this album is a lot more serious, we still joke around a lot. We fucking, we love what we're doing. We love hanging out with each other. But and that's gonna come through in some way. There's some lyrics on the I don't know.
Does it come through in the performance? Stace, do you kind of feel like you're, I suppose, performing these lyrics in a way that kind of balances the seriousness against, that kind of more lighthearted, fun vibe?
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever seen any live performances of me, but I guess what I'm probably personally known for being on stage is that I'm having a great time. I'm laughing and I'm smiling in between sets, and I'll check in on the boys while they're playing guitars, and make sure they're having a good time too. And then when it's business time, look out, because that's when I change. That's when I become an aggressive tank, not to be fucked with. Okay. But as I say, as soon as I'm done with a single phrase and it's extremely aggressive and extremely loud and sort of intimidating, I guess. And then as soon as that line is finished, I'm back to smiling and enjoying watching the crowd get off on this. I have fun with it. I'm not super serious, even though I can be singing in a serious way about a serious topic with with interwoven fun, if that makes any sense. Yeah.
I work in a music store, and there's a dude there, and he's, you know, like an older gentleman, and he came down to see a Blindfolded show because, you know, come see my band, dude. And he's like, oh, you know, I actually will. And he comes, and, you know, he's like an older dude kind of standing at the back. But then talking to him at work, he was just absolutely blown away. He was like, I cannot believe that you guys were playing that music, but you all had like smiles on your faces. Like, it was such a juxtaposition of what was going on. Like, you were belting out this insane music at me so aggressively, but you were having such a good time doing it. Like, it's so weird. Like, what am I watching? What is this band? And I think we've always kind of had an element of that, but it's changed, you know, where we used to be like, what the hell is this, when you pick up our album, because it's a freaking clown with the AK-47. Now it's like, okay, this is something that I can connect with. But now I watch them live and I'm like, what the fuck? How is this that same band? Like, yeah. I don't know. I guess it's something people figure out for themselves.
Sometimes in your lyrics, there do seem to be, I'm guessing these are maybe Stace's, since you said, you know, you'd like to read the news and things like that before you write. Some themes that are like, seem to be very explicitly political or social commentary related. And in some of the interviews we've had with other bands, we've had some bands that have shied away from that, not because they necessarily think that, you know, they shouldn't, but they felt that writing social commentary lyrics and writing meta lyrics were kind of two distinct skill sets. Is this a comment that you agree with her at all, or has it always been kind of seamlessly integrated for you when you've tried to, you know, comment on the world through your songs?
It never crosses my mind, to be honest with you. Like, I'll write what I want to write, and not a single care for anybody else goes through my mind when I do that. The only thing I really care about is whether it'll fit the song, whether it'll sound good, and whether Stu and I will enjoy putting it to a demo. That's about as far as it goes for me, to be honest. As I said, like in earlier works, I've written purely just a song about Lego, but I deliver it in a death metal medium, and I enjoy every part of that along the way. Whether it's a social commentary or a political view or an anecdote about last weekend, so it doesn't really matter to me if anyone else has got any expectations about what I should be doing and what I shouldn't be doing, is what I mean to say.
But have you ever personally found any difficulty in getting the message out the way you want, or has it all, you know, just have you found it to be kind of a natural blend?
Well, I mean, getting a message out, that's another thing that I'm not too sure that I just, like, I feel bad for saying this, but I just personally don't really care if anyone gets a message from it or not. For me, it's a sound. I'm an instrument. I'm like a guitar, or I'm like a drum kit. Not many people are going to be able to distinguish the lyrics unless they were to read them, or unless I'm specifically enunciating them in a way that so people can hear and understand. But it's not the top of my priority list for me to be passing messages on to people and hope that they receive it in the best way possible. If I really wanted that, I probably would have become a pop singer or something like that. Yeah. I hope that doesn't sound like pretentious or anything. That's really not what I mean to convey. I just, yeah, I have to be honest with you. I just don't really care if anyone is receiving a message from it or not. It's for me. It's for the boys.
Makes sense. Yeah. It's just it's an interesting comment that we've got from other vocalists, I guess. It's just that, you know, even when they've tried to write something that is political, not necessarily in the sense that they want to send a message about it, but just it's, you know, a topic that they want to cover, that like it's been difficult to integrate that topic into like a recognizably metal framework, I guess.
Okay.
But that doesn't seem to be the case for you.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. I don't feel like I have trouble writing. If I want to convey a message to somebody, I feel like I could probably do it, but I probably don't think a death metal band is the best way to do that for me anyway. Like I say, because the vocals are so often indistinguishable from guttural throat noises. So yeah, I don't know. I like having the lyrics. I like having the lyrics there for people that want to read them, but I'm certainly not performing them for people to get any sort of message out of me.
Like if a fan came up to you and said, "Hey, I read your lyrics and I really like them," would you be happy to hear that, or would you just be like, "God, I didn't care if you read it"?
I'd ask them if they were Stu's lyrics or mine first. Yeah. But sure, that would be great. That would be great. But I don't thrive off that attention or anything. I don't require that attention. But sure, that'd be great, because it would mean that we've connected with somebody in a way, and that's cool.
Yeah, I was wondering if Stu, do you have the same opinion, given what you were saying earlier about like your own experience reading through Nile lyrics?
Oh, I definitely probably feel a bit differently about it than Stace. Because a lot of the things that I write, I kind of are things that I'm happy to put out in the world, and they kind of make me feel better, and in the hopes that maybe someone reads it and connects with it, maybe on a different kind of level. But I would love it if someone came up and they were like, "Hey, this song, I connected with this song." That would be awesome. But I also, in the same way as Stace, like I don't do it for that. But if I saw Carl Sanders on the street, I would say something along those same lines.
I hope this question isn't a disaster, but I just like, Stace, has Stu ever given you lyrics to sing and you have really connected with them? Have you been like that says something to me? Like, do you have lyrics that you sing that you've been given that have become personally meaningful to you in a way that maybe even Stu didn't intend?
I mean, to be honest, off the top of my head, I can't remember if that's happened yet, but I certainly would never say that it wouldn't happen. I could totally imagine that Stu could write something that I would just totally get on board with. I mean, that's totally within the realms of possibility. I mean, I feel good when I'm singing Stu's lyrics. You know what I mean? I know that whatever he's writing has been something personal for him, and I feel honored to be able to share in Stu's creativity. He's one of the most creative people I've ever met in my life. So I know that he wouldn't steer me wrong, and if he did, he knows that I've got the gall to say that I'm not doing that. So we work well together.
So in a way, they're meaningful because they're from Stu.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Even if I don't understand the specific context, because they might have come from a personal dream of his or something like that. If I wanted to explore further, I'm sure Stu could go into it for me. If I feel I don't need to do that, if I'm happy taking my own take on the lyrics, then that's absolutely fine with me too.
It's not something we've ever really discussed. Now that you bring it up,
yeah,
we've been making music together for 11 years, and we've never really, it's kind of just been the way we've done things. And I'm sure that there's been songs along the way that Stace has said, I won't sing this, or we should change this section, and that's amazing to me. Like I love that, and I think that Stace is such an incredible lyricist himself that any way he could make anything better or help me kind of convey the message that maybe I hadn't written in a way, like we will make things better, definitely, together. In the same way that when I write the music, Nick or Tim might see a bass line or a drum part and be like, hey, like what if I did this, and then we'll flesh out something that is cooler, or that we're all more happy with. So nothing is like set in concrete with what we do.
So we had another couple of more specific questions about some of your language choices. And we noticed that, for instance, in some of your songs or albums, you lean towards rare or multisyllabic words, such as titles like modern adoxography, or phrases like instant gratification, controlling microbes, to Leviathan. Others, like song titles meth tooth, or metaphors like a love affair between a civilian and an army deserter, we were doomed, seem to follow a very different style. So is this the result of, just your two lyrical style? Like, are these written by different people, or is this just kind of a shift in styles across songs?
Yeah, that was definitely a mixture of Stu and my lyrics there. Modern adoxography was that came about because I liked the idea of taking a benign or banal topic and writing about it in a wonderful way, in an intentional and fleshed out, beautiful way. That's what how that album title came about. It sort of like alluded to the fact that we could sing literally about anything, write about anything, but we wanted to do it in a death metal medium. And for that was how that album title came about. And as I say, the rest of the lyrics there, that was definitely a mixture of Stu and mine. I can't really speak to Stu's ones, but for mine, I definitely like rare words. I like vocabulary. I like learning new words as well. And if I can use words that are creative and basically, I guess the goal is I want to write lyrics like I want to read lyrics, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Doxography was one of those words where it was like, I'd never heard it before. And then it was like, wow, okay, that's kind of like what we've been doing all along. How cool that new word that no one's really been using since like the 19th century or something. Like, if you look at like the Wikipedia of that word, it's like it was used heaps in like, the 19th century, and then it kind of like drops off, and it's just like no one's ever really used it again. I think it's a great word. It's awesome.
Yeah, I didn't know what it was until I looked it up either, actually.
No, neither.
Yeah, I'd never seen it before. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. I was like, that's a word for that. All right, nifty. Did you how did you even find it, Stace, actually?
I can't remember how I learned the word, to be honest, but I mean, I don't remember how I learned a lot of words.
Fair enough, yeah.
I just remember thinking about this whole idea of the ability to write about literally any topic in the world. It could be my shoelaces, it could be last night's dinner, it could be the slave trade in Yemen, it could be anything at all, but just to be able to take that topic and convert it into a death metal medium, no matter what it was, and it still be pummeling and aggressive and have all the hallmarks of a progressive death metal band, or any of the other silly adjectives that we've been called in recent months. Like, that fascinated me. I liked that idea, and so that was how the second album got its album title. However, the concept or the idea spans the entire breadth of our sort of history.
Is it like specifically, I suppose, the use of rare words or, longer, more complex vocabulary that I suppose facilitates the transition of that banal topic to a metal medium like you were talking about before?
I don't know. I mean, there's just this language that I use. I don't think I try too hard to make my lyrics any more complicated than I could have a conversation with my friends. Do you know what I mean? Or with my partner.
Mm-hmm.
So do the rare and complex words make it metal or make it more metal? I don't think so. I don't think so. But I like creative writing, so I think that's going to bleed through whether I'm writing about anything, or I'm writing about a Facebook status, or I'm writing lyrics. I think all of that stuff's going to bleed through. I don't think it's specifically about metal.
So this might sound like a gotcha question, and I don't mean it that way, but since you're saying, lyrics that you could talk about with your friends, you do use Latin on one of your songs. And I guess what was the motive for that? Like the song "Sic Mundus Creatus Est," or "So the World Was Created," I believe. I had to look that up. What effect did using Latin for that title have that just calling the song "So the World Was Created" would perhaps not have had?
That's a reference to the German TV show Dark. Have you ever seen that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was Nick, our bassist, I believe, who put forth the idea that we should make the last song on the album about, because he was really, really into the TV show, and so he really wanted to have this sort of like reference in there. And he suggested, because all of the songs had working titles before, and I can't even remember the working title for that last track, but we sort of fell on "Sic Mundus Creatus Est." It's specifically a Dark TV show reference, and I can't speak more to it than that, really.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good show.
That clarifies that. Yeah.
Yeah, that answers that question. Another thing we noticed, there's definitely been a decrease in the use of vulgarity in your lyrics over time. And on this new album, most songs don't swear at all. However, Lucid Visitations is the only song that swears, and it has fucking shit and bitch in it. Is there a reason why just that song has swear words? Is there something special about that song? And did you try to avoid swear words in general, or did it just kind of happen like that?
Kind of happened like that. I think that that's a really powerful lyric. The fucking sacrifices we make. And it's definitely sung in a way that it's meant to be taken seriously. It's like, because that's actually a lyric that I wrote. I wrote that song. And I know that when I wrote that song, I wasn't in the best place in my mind. And, I guess that just flowed through in those lyrics. And there you go, you've got a song. But yeah, we don't swear much at all. Not much. Yeah,
not in the lyrics anymore, eh?
Yeah, no, I didn't actually know that was the only song that had 3 swear words in it.
Yeah, it's all in one song.
Yeah, I need to watch my potty mouth.
Do you find that do you personally find that swear words in lyrics are not obviously something that wilting flowers that can't handle, but it's something you personally find I wish they could have done something a bit different when you hear it, or is it just something that you personally don't want to explore?
A lot of bands that I listen to, there isn't really swearing. A lot of the bands that I really like Nile, for example, I don't think they've ever sworn once in a lyric. It's it would be weird if they did.
Yeah,
thinking about Egyptian mythology and being like, fuck this. That doesn't really work. Same with even bands like Cannibal Corpse. They don't ever really swear. They might have one swear word in album, but everything that I'm really inspired by doesn't really swear. And I don't know why that song has swearing. I don't know why.
I'm just thinking back to that Limp Bizkit track, the band that took me away from hip hop into metal, and it had 46 uses of the word fuck in it. I forget the name of that song, but god damn, I love that song.
Was it Break Stuff?
No, it wasn't Break Stuff.
No. The first
but he's
Chocolate Starfish.
Yeah, he's
Roland.
I forget the name of it right now, but it's definitely off Hot Dog Flavored Water and the Chocolate Starfish album. But yeah, he says fuck 46 times or something in one song. And I remember that was just like the coolest thing ever. And we always used to try and like, you know, say it, sing it along with him, sort of thing. Oh, it's so funny. Gosh, that would not fly today. You'd be laughed out of the room if you tried to do something like that.
It's interesting, is it? Like, because yeah, when I was very very young, I remember thinking like, oh wow, this artist is so cool. They said fuck, and you know, like you could do that on an album. Oh my god. And it's kind of, yeah, it seems. I was surprised. I thought Cannibal Corpse swore a bit more, but maybe I've just misremembering. But it does seem, yeah, like a lot of, like we had one person in an interview tell us that swearing in metal albums is an American thing.
Oh yeah.
Is that?
Could be.
Are there geographic?
I don't think I've ever heard like a Norwegian black metal album that's had swearing in it. Yeah.
Well, another couple of like responses we've had from like Aussie bands has been that the absence of swearing in a lot of Aussie lyrics is due to the fact that Aussies don't find swearing offensive. Would you say similar things about New Zealand?
Yeah, I mean, like if you just even in any given room in New Zealand, people are just like, fuck this, fuck that. Pretty normal. Yeah. But we're so similar to Aussie in that kind of respect. Like we have our own like versions of slang that you would never hear anywhere else in the world. Same with Aussie. Like weird things. And you know, like I've got an American dude at work and he hears things all the time and he's just like, what is that? Like, what are you saying? You've got to explain to him that, like, no, I wasn't saying chia butter, like the bread. I was saying chia butter, like cheer, bro. You know, but we're not gonna, we probably won't start saying cheer, bro, or cheer butter in our songs either.
Is there like, have you ever tried, or is there a New Zealand band that has tried to work like New Zealandisms or New Zealand dialect into the lyrics?
I can guarantee it. There's
okay.
Like Swamp Dweller from down in Dunedin, they love VB beer, and I bet some of their lyrics are about drinking VB.
Classic.
Yeah, there's a Kiwi band here called Deja Voodoo, and they had a song called I would give you one of my beers, but I've only got 6. and that was like a hit here in New Zealand. Like that hit the charts in a big way because it was relatable and it had a lot of swearing in it too.
There you go.
Interesting. I'll have to check it out. See if I can connect with it. Yeah,
Deja Voodoo.
I suppose I was wondering if we can go back to lucid visitation just very briefly. If the swearing that we mentioned before is designed to offend, or if it's designed to bring attention. Because I was thinking, you know, in relation to the lyric that you were mentioning earlier, Stu, which is the fucking sacrifices we make. Was that it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is the fuck there like used to draw attention rather than, as in like, I suppose, to create emphasis rather than to be offensive, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I haven't written a lyric to try to offend anyone in a long time. It's definitely kind of like to make you listen. Like, can you understand me for just 1 second? And kind of, you know, any of us in those moments of anger will probably use a swear word, you know. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, definitely.
What about the use of I and you in your lyrics? This may be, you know, again, because you have two lyricists, just different style, but some songs seem to have like an I perspective where the singer seems to be participating in things, and other songs seem to take a bit of a step away and be more descriptive of a scene with no use of the first person. is that a style difference between the two of you, or do both of you make decisions? Okay, I'm going to use I, or I'm not going to use I. And if so, like, I guess this is, sorry, 3 questions in one. How do you decide which one you're going to use?
Mostly for me, it's not really like a conscious decision I'd make, I don't think. A lot of the times when I write lyrics, like I don't actually, I don't play a massively conscious part in it. It's kind of like they write themselves in a way, in the same way that when I have some horrible dreams that are born from traumas of seeing the city collapse, I'm not a conscious part of that, but I'm there and I'm watching it. And I guess, yeah, like I will try to not overthink things too much, kind of let things flow. And it's the same when I'm writing the music. I find once I get into a zone, or things will just start happening, and not so much of a part of it as, yeah, it just kind of happens.
How about you, Stace?
Yeah, I don't really know whether I make, like Stu said, a conscious effort to notice the difference between whether I'm writing from a first person perspective or whether I'm writing from a third party perspective. It doesn't, once again, it doesn't matter to me either way. It could be not about anyone's perspective. It could just be a commentary on something. It could be anything at all. I just don't restrict myself by concerning myself with those sorts of things. I'd rather just put pen to paper and see what happens. And if something good starts flowing from it, then that's great. I remember before this interview, I sort of said to Stu at band practice last night, like, oh man, how long is this interview for? It's an hour and a half. Oh gosh, like I think I've only got about 4 minutes of information to tell them. Like I just sort of write lyrics and it just sort of happens, and if I'm happy with it, I'm happy with it. I hope I'm not wasting your time.
No, you've given us way more than 4 minutes of information. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. But like when you do write from the first person perspective, like do you ever like imagine you writing as yourself? Like are you writing from your perspective then, or are you like embodying a character, if that makes sense?
I think there's probably a little bit of both, but more towards the latter. Like I like gonzo journalism, and I like reading journalism where the journalist has actually been involved in the thing that he's writing about, and I think that can bleed through a little bit. So I mean, I could write, for instance, the second to last track on our most recent album is about drug use and drug addiction. It's called Rorschach and Delirium. And I've got a lot of personal experience with growing up around that sort of thing. And I wouldn't say that song is written from the perspective of me, but it's certainly about something that I know a thing or two about. And I could just as easily create a character to sort of fill that role if I was going to write from the perspective of somebody.
Interesting. What about the opposite, the use of you? Like on the new album, you have lyrics like, but your time will come, mother will erase you, or I would hate for you to be missed at your turn to suck the cyst. Are you referring to a specific individual when you say you, or like what is referenced generally when you use a you in your songs, or does it just kind of flow naturally, like you said with I?
Well, so the first lyric you mentioned there was one that I wrote, and that's actually from the perspective of people that have been, not necessarily people, but animals and people that have been caged up in some sort of way. That song's The Obscured Witness, and it's about the person that's watching, or the animal that's watching literally everything else crumble around them, and yet they're the ones that are caged up. for instance, the beginning of that song, I mentioned the lyrics Silverback Parade. And it's just after I'd visited the local zoo here, and I'd seen these gorillas sitting in the cage there, and they were literally on parade for everyone to sort of see, and they were looking out at me, and I just sort of wondered what their perspective was about that, if they could think potentially about what was happening out in the world. It all seems to be going to shit, really, and their vision of it was obscured by these glass plates in front of them. So that's where the idea of that song came about, but it can apply to anything, really. And so when I say you, speaking from a gorilla's perspective, the you is everybody in the world.
So the you actually includes I there in a way, right?
Yeah, for sure. But as you can see, like, anything goes with me. I can try and write lyrics about a gorilla's perspective, sitting in a zoo, but I'm applying my own, like, sort of human traits to their thinking. I don't know. Anything goes with me.
And Stu, when you use like I and you, do you use them in a different way or in a similar way to Stace?
That's probably one of the more similar things we have with our lyrics, which is interesting, because there's a few things tonight that we've talked about that have been a bit kind of eye-opening, because, like I said, we haven't really had these discussions before. I think, like, I try not to think too much about it, because I don't write a song. I've never written a song like about someone, like this song is about Jeremy from down the way. Like, I've never done that. It's always been like about, it might be about like suicide, or it might be about something like the earthquake happening. But I'll try to be like as kind of metaphoric as I can be, I guess, and kind of distance myself from the actual real life situation that happened, because I don't really want to write a song about a friend that's passed away specifically. But it might be trying to convey some of the feelings that I've had when dealing with how that's made me feel, and that could be from me, or it could be from me watching how it's affected other people, which could be you. But in saying that, I wouldn't, like, I've never written a song about a specific thing that I saw someone going through. Like, I wouldn't want to do that. I feel like that would be almost like a breach of privacy,
Fascinating.
So, in closing, I guess, what do you think are the kind of fundamental purposes of the lyrics in your music, given what we've spoken about, and more broadly, perhaps, in a genre like metal?
I think they can be what anyone wants them to be honest. Like, I hope that's not like a bit of a cop-out answer, but I just think that if I want them to be meaningful for the audience, if I want them to convey a message, then I can just do that, and metal allows me the freedom to do it. I think that if it was pop music, for instance, you're going to be absolutely restricted and limited about what you can write about, because to make it in pop music, you've got to have, big labels, and they control everything you do and how you look and all that sort of thing. Metal is not about that at all. Metal is about freedom, and freedom to do and say what you want to say, but also the freedom to receive the consequences of that if somebody doesn't like it. So that's I hope that's not too vague. I don't want to be vague there. I just mean to say that anything with me personally, anything goes. And if I wanted it to be about giving messages to people, if I wanted it to be about a political agenda or anything like that, then I could make it so. And I think the ability that I have to write about anything and that it can just be delivered in a death metal medium, I find that fascinating and amusing. And I'll continue to keep it that way, I think.
And Stu?
I think for me, it really depends on what I'm going through when I've written that song. Some songs might be a bit more like off the cuff. There's not so much care put into them. Other songs, like I say, kind of have written themselves without me feeling like I've put too much into it. But then sometimes when I read them back, I'm like, oh, wow, okay, that's like, or, a few months might pass and then I'll read them again and they'll kind of make more sense, I guess, if as I'm processing something that I'm going through. And I'm still processing like the traumas of some of the shit that's gone down in my life and here in Christchurch. Yeah, I think like what Stace says, a lot of our lyrics are ambiguous, metaphoric, and if people can make connections with them in their own way, then, and it helps them in some kind of way, then I think that is amazing and beautiful, and I would just love for that to be happening, and I hope it is.
Thank you guys so much. This has been really fascinating. We this went way longer than we expected, and we actually skipped like a large number of our prepared questions because your answers just kind of went off from where we expected this. So thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. This has been, really, really interesting.
It's been great.
Yeah, we haven't taken up too much time.
No, it's later where you are than we are. So apologies to you. Yeah, sorry for keeping you up this late.
No, it's okay. It's all right. I'll probably take the morning off. Thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate. I'm sure I speak for Stu, but thank you very much for having us. We're sort of rolling on the buzz of this album coming out, and we've had a lot of interviews and a lot of reviews, and this is our first sort of study.
Our first deep dive into the lyrical content, that's for sure.
Yeah, and so we've definitely gotten something out of this as well, and so thank you very much for inviting us on, and we hope to see the results of what you guys come up with.
Do you have
absolutely? We'll keep in touch.
Yeah. Do you have tours coming out? Any obviously the new albums come out, so like when's your next album is not a good question, but are you planning to do like the bubble opened? Or are you coming down to Australia anytime soon?
We absolutely would love to, and we really hope that it can happen. Definitely.
Yeah.
It's really uncertain times though.
Yeah.
What's happening this week could be completely different next week, and it makes it really hard in the music industry because you're like, how the hell do we plan anything?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All over the news today. The biggest thing going around today is that companies, specifically Vodafone, have brought out a new policy today saying that if you work for Vodafone but you choose to go and take a holiday in Australia, and then for whatever reason a lockdown occurs and you get stuck in Australia, that they can then fire you for that. So so now there's like employment lawyers getting involved saying that they can't do that and yada yada yada. So I mean, it's pretty risky for us to like just pack up and go on a tour around Australia right now. I think we'll probably wait to see how the vaccine rollout goes before we start booking any of those tickets, because we don't want to lose our jobs. And
sounds very sensible.
Very reasonable given that.
Yeah. Whereabouts are you guys based in Australia? You're in Sydney.
I'm in Melbourne.
Yeah. Is there a Sydney accent and a Melbourne accent that's distinguishable?
Not super distinguishable. There's like, I don't know, slight differences, but I think the bigger differences are between like Victoria and Queensland, or Victoria and South Australia.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wiz's accent is significantly different.
Yeah, I'm not Australian. That'll do it. That'll do it. Although I will say, so I have not lived lived in the States since I was 21. I've been jumping around since then, and I came back to my hometown after living in abroad and in Australia for a while. And I was at my a family member's house, and they were having a party in my hometown again. And one of his friends came up to me and said, "Hey, where are you from?" And I'm like, literally here, like literally a few blocks away. So I guess like my accent has changed somehow because people from my hometown now think I'm not from my hometown. So no one thinks I'm Australian, but I guess something has happened over the last decade.
Oh, cool.
Just before we finish up, I just wanted to get some info that we can give to our listeners about where to find any updates on any potential tours in the future, or new releases, video clips, all that kind of stuff. Where can we get that?
Yeah, Stu's our social media man, so he'll hook you up with it.
We're on every social media platform. You can get us on Facebook, you can get us on Instagram, we're on Spotify, Apple Music, any kind of merchandise or anything like that you can find on our Bandcamp. We've got a YouTube channel as well where we've got a couple of new video clips, which we're really
Twitter.
Yeah, we're on Twitter as well for some reason. I think that we've talked a lot about our lyrics tonight, and we really tried to make some of those come alive in a visual medium. So I would recommend checking out those video clips because we put a lot of work into them and trying to bring those those words to life, and we're really proud of them.
The music video is really cool. I liked it a lot.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll add those links in the description to this episode as well, so people can find you.
Thank you very much.
Perfect. That's really, really kind of you. Thank you very much.
All right, so we're a small team, so it'll take us around a month or so to get this out. But when we do, we'll send it to you. We'll send you the link, and we'll show you, send you all the little promotion we'll do, and we'll be in touch as soon as we can. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much.
No, thank you guys. Yeah.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Have a good evening.
Good night.
Hope you can get the morning off.
Yeah.
Take care. Keep in touch.
See you later.
Peace.
Thank you for listening to Lingua Brutalica. We hope you enjoyed it, and we hope you stay tuned for our next episode. Before we leave, we just wanted to acknowledge that this podcast is recorded on the unceded lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation and the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. We pay respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging.